Is he sick of the losing environment? Does he want to come to a club who has that established winning culture? The Pies are going into their first bye round of the season after a tough start to the season. Though, what better time to look at our team and consider the landscape for Collingwood from a player acquisition standpoint in the very near future. Now, why would we look at that right now? Well, we look at our age in our team and we're the second oldest team in the league, so there will come a time where our premiership window will start to dwindle very quickly, and we need to be proactive and try and emulate what Geelong have been able to do over the last, decade or two, where they look like they're done and dusted, they're getting old, and then they find players from other clubs, they find hidden gems, they look to players who've been delisted, and then all of a sudden they're at the top of the ladder again and having a tilt at a flag within a handful of years each time. And for Collingwood right now, I want to talk about players that I think are a chance to retire at the end of 2024 for Collingwood. We're looking at players like Jeremy Howe, Scott Pendlebury, and Steele Sidebottom. And then at the end of 2025, so the year after, we've got Tom Mitchell, Mason Cox, Jamie Elliott, and Myercheck. These are players that are listed as a maybe, in my opinion, when you look at their age, their experience, what they've achieved, and what more can they possibly ask for? Do they want to be one club players, etc., etc.? So those are the permutations that we must consider when going through the transition and considering who may not be in that picture. What we do know is out of those 8 players that I've listed just there, we know that at least 3 or 4 of them will not be playing for Collingwood / be retired by the end of 2025. So that's a 24-month window. And Jake Clark suggested with some of these retirements coming around the corner shortly, Collingwood could see an opening of around $5 million in their cap space, which gives Collingwood a massive opportunity to go hard in the free agency window in the next 2 years. Jay Clark also thinks there's a chance that we keep our first round draft pick for this year, and I think that would be a good decision considering how strong this draft cattle is looking right now. It sounds like the scouts are really struggling to formulate what that top 10 looks like in the 2024 draft. On top of that, Collingwood have given away 7 of our first round draft picks in the last 10 years. So it'd be great to keep this pick up our sleeve. Now, before we go looking from the outside, let's look internally and see which type of players we have already available who are budding and developing that could potentially replace these future retirees for Collingwood. So Hoskin, Elliott, Sidebottom, we know predominantly are wingers at this point of their careers. Hoskin, Elliott a bit more versatile going into the back line. Sidebottom could play in the forward pocket, but we don't really see him there. We see him typically on the wing and sometimes very sparingly features in the centre bounce if something's not going right for Collingwood and Craig McRae is looking to mix something up. But the likely replacements from an internal perspective would be players like Harvey Harrison, who came through only a couple years ago, still relatively young, having a decent start to his season in the VFL. He had quite an impressive game against Brisbane, collecting 23 disposals, kicked a goal, had 8 inside 50s and 9 tackles. So I guess the question more or less is, can he keep that consistency, and does he have the fitness capacity to be running up and down the wing, as he is more probably suited for that high half forward role right now. But we'll see where that one ends up. And then we've got some more AFL tried players in Josh Carmichael, Jacob Ryan, and Jack Bytel. So we'll see where those ones go. Obviously still quite young and still establishing themselves, so we'll see how that transpires. For the likes of your Tom Mitchells and your Scott Pendleburys, I'm not saying when I say replacement, I'm not saying these guys are going to be better than Scott Pendlebury and Tom Mitchell.
Nope.
I'm suggesting more so that these players try and emulate and replicate parts of these players' games. So we try and make that connection there. First and foremost, Lachie Sullivan and Finn McRae. Obviously, Finn McRae's had a little bit of a crack this season. However, hasn't quite taken advantage of the opportunities that's been presented. I think it will be a case of sooner rather than later for him, or a matter of when, not if, for Finlay. And then Lachie Sullivan was just quietly an emergency for the Brisbane game in the AFL matchup. So that also points to the fact that he's not too far away from having his first opportunity at AFL level after dominating the VFL for several years for Footscray. He started off the season in the VFL for Collingwood exceptionally well as well, already averaging 30 plus disposals and seems like a form slump or an injury woe away to slide into the Collingwood midfield. Further down the line, we've got Ed Allen, who's a big-bodied midfielder, again, playing his trade in the VFL. And then we've got someone who's currently injured and just came in through the 2023 draft in Harry Dimatier, 6'1", dashing halfback runner, can roll into the midfield as well. So I'm really excited to see what he can do once he's able to find himself in the team. And if we're looking at position swaps inside the AFL team right now, Beau McCreary could potentially roll through the midfield even more as these players get older and start to see themselves out. He was tried quite frequently in the midfield through the preseason, so it's something that is definitely within consideration of the Collingwood coaching panel right now. For Mason Cox, it seems like Oscar Steen and Aiden Begg would be the likely replacements. Are they going to have as much as an impact as Cox has had over the last few years? I'm not too sure. That's yet to be seen. We've got Brody Myercheck. Obviously, McStay's still going to be around, and we're not too sure how many more years Myercheck's got left, but if we consider Myercheck being the second key tall when we have a key tall available, I think anyone between Ash Johnson, McInnes and Kruger could fulfill that role. All three of them at their peak, I'd like Kruger in that second key tall forward role, and then maybe a Reef McInnes as that third key tall. And currently out of favour, in my opinion, would be Ash Johnson. He needs to prove himself back at VFL level, which he isn't quite doing just yet. He hasn't scored a ton of goals in his last couple of games in the VFL, so that's a watch this space for Mr. Ash Johnson. Moving on to Jamie Elliott, I guess we do have a good contingency of small to medium forwards right now in the AFL. So if we lose, when we do lose Billy, we will have Bobby stepping up more, Beau McCreary and Lockie Schultz. And then we've got Joe Richards in the VFL kicking 6 goals against Brisbane, 3 on his left, 3 on his right. A true small forward, so another player to add to those existing stocks for Collingwood. And lastly, as far as the replacement for Jeremy Howe is concerned, we've got Tu Jath, who is a 2023 draft pick, brother of CJ from Hawthorn. Exciting running dash off halfback and has great intercepting ability. So he will be a prospect to keep an eye on over the next couple of years. Josh Eyre, who was one of our SSP picks, unfortunately did a hamstring tendon, so he's out for quite some time, but he's a 6'6" monster. So he would be someone we could consider replacing Howie as Howie sees himself out. And then Billy Frampton, obviously doing what he's doing right now, may alleviate the need to have someone directly replace someone like Jeremy Howe. Now, with all that being said and taken into consideration about Collingwood's internal movements and developments, let's talk about the reason why you guys came to this video initially, and that's for the free agency talk. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, it's unlikely that we'll use our first round draft pick to secure a player from a different club. We're going to look at free agency, and I'm looking more so at the 2025 free agency period, so not the end of this year, the end of next year. Let's start with the biggest one of them all, in my opinion, and the most desirable one is Oscar Allen, a true leader at the West Coast Eagles, only 24 years old. He had kicked 53 goals last season and is obviously, as I mentioned, out of contract in 2025. Oscar Allen is born and bred in Western Australia, so it makes it even more difficult to potentially lure him to Melbourne, to a club like Collingwood. But could it be a case where Oscar Allen is looking for something new, a new environment, a new place to explore? That's something more personal that we need to think about, because yes, we know Western Australia is his home, but we got nomads that exist in this world who wanna go to different states and different countries and see something else and have a fresh start. If there's an inkling of that, then there's no reason why Collingwood shouldn't at least try and probe and ask the question about what Oscar Allen wants in his life and his footy career. Is he sick of the losing environment? Does he want to come to a club who has that established winning culture? I'm not saying West Coast Eagles don't have that, because they have been in the finals more than anyone when it comes to a percentage rate throughout their history, albeit a little bit shorter than the other teams. So I'm not questioning that. I'm just talking, there's a recency bias to this. So he would be more familiar with the recent losing culture that West Coast has immersed themselves in by accident. And then now conversely, we got Collingwood who are always trying to win and are winning right now. That would be an amazing coup if Collingwood could acquire someone like Oscar Allen, just moving into his prime of his career. Now, a few injury concerns, but you get that with most key position players. It usually does pay dividends in the end if you are patient and invest in them and get their rehab and their strength and conditioning right and their confidence. It adds an extra versatility to our team. and gives us flexibility with players like Darcy Moore. And Oscar Allen can swing back into the back line and play that role that Darcy Moore does so well for Collingwood. Moving on to Harrison Petty from the Melbourne Demons, another young key tall who initially established himself as a key backman and did that very well. However, has recently made the change over to the forward line for the D's, and last season had a breakout game, kicking 6 goals. I forget who was it against, but he showed some really promising signs as a key forward, and I love that from a key tall who can go on either side of the field and play defensively or play as a forward. It shows that there's an understanding and a bit of a IQ behind the way they go about their footy. The caveat with him, similar to Oscar Allen, is Harrison Petty initially comes from Adelaide. So I'm sure Port Adelaide and Adelaide will have first dibs. But in saying that, if he wants to come to a winning culture, he's welcome to come to Collingwood, the biggest fan base that exists in the AFL. So let's see where that one goes. Number 3 on my list is Sam Taylor from GWS. He is the leading intercept player in the league right now. He hails out of Western Australia as well. So again, Fremantle and West Coast Eagles will probably get first dibs on someone like him. But if he wants to come over to Collingwood, more than welcome. It's always worth asking the question. Collingwood is a destination club at the end of the day. There's no other way to put it. And if you don't understand that, then you probably don't understand how the footy world revolves right now. On top of being the best intercept defender in the league right now, he's the 3rd highest rated defender in the league based on champion data. So goes to show he's at the peak of his powers right now and is having a great season, having a great last few seasons for GWS, and is one of the main reasons why GWS are doing what they do right now. I guess as you can see, there is a bit of a running theme in this video when it comes to the free agency players that I would like to see Collingwood target, and that's obviously being the key tall department. However, I have put in a midfielder, a contested ball, who is a stoppage clearance beast and a goal assist king in Luke Davies-Uniacke. A young player also coming into his prime now at a losing club like North Melbourne, whose contract is up at the end of 2025. I think he's worth a crack, especially, like I said, if we lose players like Tom Mitchell and Scott Pendlebury, and if Nick Dacos is to continue off the half-back flank, I don't think Jordan Ngowi is someone we can rely on game in, game out when it comes to the midfield battle. Whereas Luke Davies-Uniacke is a top 10 contested ball. He's a top 10, top 5 stoppage clearance beast, and he averages a goal assist per game, which is top 10 in the league for midfielders. So definitely worth a crack for somebody who hasn't been able to experience what it feels like to be on a winning team. And maybe if he comes to Collingwood, it alleviates a bit of weight off his shoulders and it allows him to play a bit more freer, because right now, he's in the top 3 of that team as far as performers are concerned, and there's a high expectation at a losing club. It would be a different story and a different narrative if he comes to a winning club where we already have established players who we rely on week in, week out across the spine of the field. He can sort of find his way into the game and into the team at a rate that would be reasonable to allow him to develop. Lastly, I just want to throw a little curveball and mention this player and throw him into the mix, because he had an unbelievable breakout game this weekend just past at Gather Around for Gold Coast. I'm talking about Mac Andrew, a young budding key tall defender, 6'8", 20 years old. Had 16 intercept possessions, most by any player this year, and 6 intercept marks along with 24 disposals, and used the ball very well and was undeterred by any oncoming pressure that GWS were applying. So he had an awesome game against a great side in GWS. And the reason why I like Collingwood's chances to potentially acquire a player like Mac Andrew is because, one, obviously he's out of contract at the end of 2025. And he's from Berwick in Melbourne, and they have a strong Sudanese community in the Berwick/Dandenong area. So I would imagine he would have some close ties within that community. I think that will eventually lure Mac Andrew back home to be with his family and his friends, and hopefully that's at Collingwood if they can present all the reasons why he should come back to Melbourne and, more importantly, to Collingwood. What do you guys think? Is there someone else we should be going for? Taylor Walker, who's out of contract, one club player. Tom Hawkins, out of contract, also one club player. Bailey Smith has been on the tip of our tongues as Collingwood fans as well. Who else do you think we should consider going into free agency at the end of this year and into next year? Until then, we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.